That's really
I gotta get off.
recording in progress.
Okay. Pauline says she's waiting, but I don't see her. So we can get started. Should we start with?
The only thing is the policy that you wanted to discuss is probably good to be discussed with the two lawyers
Yeah,
who aren't here.
yeah. Well,
So we can do
Elaine
that.
says she's waiting in the waiting room, but she's not. I don't see her. But we can start with a roll call.
That's easy.
Do we just want to go around the room and then we can go on to the
Mary Lou Lawrence.
Steve Brown.
Sarah Bees, Carolyn Coffey.
Alex Viteri.
Great. Did everyone take a look at the minutes from the last meeting?
Mhm.
I did.
Did.
I move that we accept the minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstain? Okay, passes. Director's report. All right, right, is that what's next?
Yes.
Yeah. I'll skip over the safe child policy and see if somebody else comes in.
Elaine is texting me, asking me to ask you to let her in.
Yeah, so under attendees, we see 0. So she's not, I don't know.
What about participants?
That's just panelists, so it's myself and Alex.
What if you go, just try that one, yes.
I don't see that she's there. I didn't finish my sentence. I don't see you. Yeah, I don't see, Elaine, Elaine, are you able to see us? You text me? She's in the waiting room. She'll still be able to see us.
You can hold up a side.
That's bizarre.
Yeah.
How about if you invite her at the bottom right?
Yep.
Never used that feature before. Let's try it.
Oh, it's asking her to sign in. Okay. She's trying to sign in.
Oh,
Okay.
let's get her the password on that.
Well, it isn't that. She has to actually sign into Zoom.
Oh,
think.
because it has to be updated.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I'll get started with the rest of my report. And then if Catherine or Elaine pop in, that would be great. Which I don't have much, but so we received a cultural council grant for Mama Steph. One of the things we have going on this year. There she is. It's like magic. We'll promote her even. Here she is. Hi, Elaine.
Alex is gonna go to sleep.
Hi. Sorry, everyone. I'm so sorry.
No
Oh,
worries.
that's okay. So one of the things that we're finding this year is that the cost of programs, our programmers, has skyrocketed. So the friends are feeling a little extra pressure to support level service situation with such high increases. So we're also trying to help out a little bit more. And so we applied for the Cultural Council grant and we received $1,100 to help support Mama Stuff. So that was great. In regards to library publicity, so we are working on, in line with our strategic plan, to continue to spread the word about what a modern library is and that we're a great meeting space. And we're also trying to spread the word about the Pavilion project. So we were in the Boston Globe, we were in the Cohasset Anchor, and I'm looking forward to being in the Stroll magazine that goes to everybody's house. I believe it's a 2-page spread, although I haven't seen it. But on one side, it is the Pavilion project, and on the other side, it's an interview with Sharon Moody. So it's kind of a little bit of both. So those are some things coming down the pike. upcoming library events, Library Legislative Day is on March 15th. I don't know if there's anybody on the board who went on a regular basis. Everybody's welcome to go if they want to. You don't have to, but I will be going. And I know sometimes there are trustees and friends. So if anybody still feels inclined.
You know if they're going to talk about or discuss ways of dealing with those folks that want to censor certain books in the
Yeah, so I don't know if they're going to talk about that at Legislative Day, but it is a huge topic. And I actually just met with Maura Deedy, who is the advisor for Trustees and Friends. And this is one of the things that she's taken on.
Right.
And so she's been working really hard at, in fact, she just emailed me and said, I need to see your reconsideration policy. And so we sent it to her so she could take a look. She said she was going to use it. She said, this is great. I'm going to use it for one of my presentations. And I said, well, we did borrow it from Weymouth. So I said, you can put our name in, but maybe under Weymouth. So that's something that, you know, they're just making sure. And generally the MBLC doesn't go through library policies and like check to see if certain libraries have policies. That's the job of the local trustee groups. But I think in this instance, she just is making sure that everybody's geared up to make sure that, you know, they have the right tools in place to be successful if something like this comes up. So, it is being talked about a lot. I don't know if it'll come up at Legislative Day.
Does it come up here amongst our patrons?
We had one patron who had checked out a book to read to a grandchild who didn't really read through the book and was a little upset when they started reading it, that it wasn't the content that they would have presented to their grandchild. So we did have that situation. It didn't get to a point where that person wanted to do a formal complaint. In fact, they complained to staff and they didn't even come to see me. So, and they were, you know, invited to do so. So that was really kind of the biggest one that we've had. We've had grumblings here and there of like, oh, why did they put this book on display or, you know, whatever, but nothing that's gone to a formal complaint. Gail has some really great, well, everybody has some great programs coming up, but Gail especially. So she joined in with a partnership of all the Massachusetts public libraries who wanted to join in. So it ended up being like 67 libraries into a cost share for a job seekers networking group. And so it's actually 3 months long and every week is a different topic that you can sign up for. The one in January, I believe is this one is specifically a networking program, but there's going to be resume building. So it's a different topic every week and you can opt in. So it only costs us $100 for all of these.
Fantastic.
And we did have 4 patrons register for this specific one. But there's a lot of this unique programming going on where, because Zoom has been introduced, that we can cost share on things. And so we can actually offer more programming for a lesser price, which is helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Allison is doing Teen Food Fridays. As you know, the next one coming up is Snowman Donut Kit. This program has gone very, very well. She had Cupcake Wars last month. I was on vacation, but everybody raved about it. We had a whole voting system on Facebook. The town highlighted it as one of like the best 5 things that happened that week. I think we got probably, was it 25 teams?
Something like that.
Yeah.
It was a
Terrific.
lot,
Amazing.
yeah. It was really well received.
Yeah, it was great. And even Allison's just like, it didn't even really need to be a contest. Everybody had so much fun, but the contest kind of just brought the publicity in for it to let other people know that we were doing it. So that was great. So these Food Fridays and these kind of foodie things are working to bring teenagers in. Gail is doing her Crafter Dark. She's doing a lotus flower lantern. She also has set up somebody, again, Zoom, magical thing. Somebody from NASA is coming to talk about the Artemis project.
Who's coming physically?
Zooming, coming via camera. And again, Zoom has allowed us to bring in some, better speakers and not have to pay for their flight and everything else to get here, like the astronaut we had a few years ago. So we're looking forward to that. She also started Great Decisions. And she had, last time we talked, she had 2 openings for that. Other projects, we're still working on our website design project. It's going very slowly. We are working on our fundraising. We are launching a GoGov CRM platform, and we are one of the pilot departments to do this. So this was a select board goal this year, was to be better at tracking kind of how constituents get in touch with us and what questions they ask and how many times that happens, and start tracking statistics. With the DPW, it works out really well because one of the things they want to track is, materials and how much materials they're using, how many people are going to certain jobs, that type of thing. I'm working on wrapping my head around how to best utilize this for us and so it's for community services. So all of our community services departments utilize this. And so I'll be working on that with the library.
Is that COBB, COBB?
GoGov.
Oh, sorry.
Now, when you said you were working on fundraising, what's the fundraising? Is that the
Pavilion.
CLT? Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, just assisting the CLT.
Yeah.
And then another project we're working on is the First Thursdays Men Group collaboration, which Alex is going to talk about. Does anybody have questions about my report before?
We've locked her out.
I'm so sorry, I totally blanked. I thought it was 6:30. I don't know.
You have to go
My
to the
head's all
principal's
over the place.
office.
I apologize.
No
No
worries.
big deal.
You're here.
Yes, I'm here now.
So I could go back to the Safe Child policy, or unless Alex, you're ready to go?
No, you can continue on. Go ahead. No, I can hold.
Okay, so I just want to circle back to the Safe Child policy. This came up during the holiday season. I was taking some time to shelve because things were very slow, and I thought this is a great opportunity for me to get out on the floor, see what's going on. I had kind of heard some mumblings about children kind of getting out of the eyesight of their caregiver. And the deepest concern is that they're hitting the accessible button at the doors and they're making a beeline for the parking lot, and they're quick. And so, so that was a concern amongst the circulation staff because they're watching this often. We did find a child in the parking lot recently, a 3-year-old who had not found their caregiver, decided to go out to the car. We've just had a few instances that are, a little alarming. And I think we have the wonderful problem that we are a safe place to people, and they feel very welcome here, and they feel very trusting here. The problem with that, though, is that we are a public library and we're a public space, and anyone can come in. And, especially with that recreation door that we do keep locked, but heaven forbid somebody comes in that door or decides to exit that door, then we really don't see. There's also some liability issues. Librarians cannot be the supervisors of children. Of course, we do the best we can to make sure everybody's safe, but we can't be liable for that. So I looked at our policy. It seemed fairly vague, and I started looking around at other libraries' policies that seem a lot more specific. And they're more specific because they're running into the same problems that we are. And I just think it's important that my goal is not to be the police and walk around, how old are you and how old are you and that, but we need to have something in place to protect us and also to make sure that caregivers are aware of, what our expectations are. I was shelving and there was a group of 4-year-olds that hung out for a half hour by themselves until I said, all right, I have to go find whoever they belong to. And the caregivers were in the community room having lunch. So they had left their very young children in the children's room to go have lunch. And again,
Outside the building or in here?
in the community room.
Oh,
Yeah, but still, I mean,
Yeah.
they had no eyesight on these children. And they were pretty little. So again, we're thrilled that people feel comfortable here and, and safe, but I would hate for something to happen. And so I did some research on some other policies, and I added some of that content to ours. And so I just wanted to have a discussion on, whether we wanted to have a stronger policy, and if we did, is there ages that we're interested in, or if we just want to take some time to read the other policies and then come back and discuss it. I'm not in a speedy hurry to get this done, but I do I do think that we need something more specific.
I agree.
I thought the suggestions were good, and I read the other policies seemed all
Yeah.
similar.
Yes,
I
yeah.
agree. My only question was about setting the age for kids who are allowed to come in without caregivers.
Mhm.
And I just wondered if that was intentional or was it sort of arbitrary, or I wanted to hear what the thinking was.
So it was kind of just looking at the other policies and trying to find a space. So we set it at 12. I just felt like 12 was an age that people were generally allowed to be at home by themselves. And so that's kind of why I thought, well, if they're home by themselves,
Then you're also babysitting for the
Wait.
children at that age.
yeah.
Wait,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what, are you saying I can't go to the library if I'm a latchkey kid at the age of 8? That's the most ridiculous thing in the world. That's when I started going to the library in LA by myself. There's like, that's ridiculous. Like this, like the saying that 12 years old is the age you can come to the library by yourself. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, you have to be able to be responsible for yourself. Were you allowed to be home by yourself at 8?
Yeah, I'm a latchkey kid. Like that's what you do in cities. I mean, yeah, it's absurd. Like my daughter's running around town at 10 on her bike. So I mean, I don't know. Like okay. I just,
Can I suggest that we maybe look at it using a criteria other than age? Like it could be first strike and you're out. Or can we do it based on grade? Or can we do it based on where the child is? Because like Alex, I used to spend a lot of time in our library.
At a young age.
At a young age.
Well,
So
the
Alex-
parents were different then. That's, I mean, and the standards that kids are asked to adhere to were different then than they are now. I think that
You
that's
think
what
that-
Megan is telling us. I mean, Alex, I was the same. I went home to an empty house, but I got off the bus in the suburb. I didn't have a library to go to. The reason why I asked the question is because it leaves out the Deer Hill kids coming after school.
And how old are they?
That's grades 3, 4, and 5. So, I mean,
8 to 11.
8? Okay.
yeah, so.
I mean, I'm not married to 12. I just
So
was
that's
kind
why
of
I
like
asked, 'cause I
gauging.
didn't
Yeah.
You've
know
got
whether
8.
you were thinking that you wanted to, sort of bring down the numbers that are coming from Deer Hill, if that
Yeah.
was an intentional thought process. Or
No.
if it was just,
My
so-
thought process was really, okay, at what age do you stay home by yourself? But I
right.
have really no concept of that because I don't have any
Or
children
with
that
an
are of
older
that
brother.
age.
I mean, you see families with, a 12-year-old brother, an 8-year-old brother or something.
Yes.
If they can jump off the bridge, I would think they could come to the library.
But it's a good point. There are a lot of kids that ride their bikes.
Yes,
And they
Mhm.
might want to stop here on their
Yeah.
way home. I
right.
mean, it's not like we're going to be checking their ID and
No.
telling them they can't come in if they're not 12 years old. But
Well,
I
sorry.
do agree that I would like to be a welcoming place for those kids on
Yes.
their way
Yeah,
At
home.
age
yeah.
And I
8.
think
Okay.
that a parent reading the policy might say to their Deer Hill kid, well, you can't do that anymore.
Right.
And I don't think we want that.
No, we don't.
Which I think, Alex, I think how I would view it is that we want to cater our policy to the people who are using the library. So the question is, do we have 8-year-olds coming in here who we feel great about being on their own? If
Or
that's not the
conversely.
case, exactly, or exactly the opposite.
We don't get a lot of kids coming down from Deer Hill that I see like that young. But that doesn't mean I do want to close the door to it. I'm just working on like a responsible age. So the other question that comes up is, if 8-year-olds are here in a group by themselves, they're behaving all as well. At what age can you be then a caregiver for? Like, I don't know, I would welcome 8-year-olds here, but I wouldn't welcome an 8-year-old who's watching their 5-year-old sibling.
Right.
that's a different story. Yes, I agree on that. I think that's like a 16-year-old, like, right? Like if you're a caregiver, you have to be somewhat responsible and
Yeah,
able
who
to
is responsible enough to escort the child and get him or her from, home to the library.
Right. So I put 14 in the policy that I put together. Again, I'm happy
As a
to change it
caregiver.
as a caregiver, but I feel like at that point, you could be like a mother's helper or whatever, maybe 12. Okay,
Yeah.
Okay.
12,
I think,
or- yeah,
mo-
or
I
even
think
11.
most responsible girls anyway are, to your point, there's a big difference between, some 12-year-old
I know. Yeah,
people and other 12-year-old people.
Yeah.
Right, right.
If you do it by
Yeah.
grade, in some cases, that
oh,
helps
that's
a little
true.
bit
Yeah.
because your parents are focused on making you ready for the greater responsibility of moving, depending on our schools, from 5th to 6th grade or whatever that break is.
Right.
And I think it also sends a signal about our readiness to have kids coming from Deer Hill, but maybe it's 4th grade and not 3rd grade. Maybe the 3rd graders, and so maybe this is the thing that they, you can aspire to as a 3rd grader. Well, next year you'll be allowed to go to the library after school.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
So I just was wondering, where are we having trouble right now? I mean, what's happening in the library that would kind of like, are there 3rd graders coming in that are causing trouble, or? Are we just
So
kind of just forward thinking?
we're forward thinking. We don't really have any young people causing any trouble, but we have caregivers that are like right now we have an 8-year-old that comes with their 4-year-old brother for hours in the evening, and it's
Do they read books? Do they? sit and
they're
read
very
books?
well behaved,
So-
but there's a liability concern that that we have 2 fairly young children hanging out by themselves, and who's somebody who's responsible. I just
Mm.
so I just think we need,
Ask the follow-up question's the more important question. If they don't have the library to hang out in, where will they go? That's the more important question is the follow-up question, not the liability question about the library. The more important question is where would they go if they didn't have the library?
Yeah, but you know what, I have
Respectfully,
to,
Alex, a 4-year-old and an 8-year-old should not be unsupervised. So, I mean, to me, the more important question is, where is somebody who's responsible for this 8-year-old and 4-year-old? That's the question that is alarming me personally, but again, like
whoever's in
And
charge
it's-
there thinks
yeah.
that the library staff should be watching their kids,
Yeah.
right?
can I just say something? I don't think that it's the library's response. I think it's a reality that, what Alex's question, the second part or the first part of the question is a reality for some children, for some families. I get that. I grew up in the Bronx. I remember Eitan Pates, who never made it to school that day. So my perspective is it's a bad world out there. And, is the library in a position as a public place to be responsible for whoever is in the library? Now, we can only make it as safe as possible, but we cannot guarantee safety. And because we cannot guarantee safety, because it is a liability and we would be held liable for that, the first step for me is those really little kids whose parents aren't within eyesight of a really little kid. That's an issue for me. And I think that should be stated clearly in a policy that, whoever is, if you're below the age of whatever, we can do it by grade, we can do it by below the age of 8, that an actively engaged caregiver of at least however many 12 years of age in the immediate vicinity and in visual contact with a child under the age of 8. So that's one thing, that's one category for me. And what we need to be doing is to not put the staff in a position of having to be responsible for a 4 and 8-year-old for extended periods of time when there isn't an active, responsible caregiver. And where, what are we going to say to these kids? Like, where's your emergency contact information? I mean, do we expect the librarians to be getting their emergency contact information? And what happens after closing or it's close to closing? When a parent, for work reasons, can't get there. Is the librarian expected to sit there with the kids, or is the responsibility after a certain point for the librarian has to contact the police to say this child's parents, unfortunately, isn't here? I mean, that may sound really cruel and awful, but it's protective. We can't guarantee that there isn't some person that's going to walk into the library, and it takes 3 seconds for a 3-year-old to be taken out of the library when there isn't a parent actively watching or in the vicinity of that child.
You know, my expectation for the staff is to use this policy as a tool as needed. So if, you know, this is something we use when there's a behavior policy problem, or we see that maybe there's some, you know, obvious neglect going on, you know, we use it as a tool. We're not going to follow everybody around. I'm talking to Elaine, sorry. You know, I'm not going to follow everybody around and ask for their ID and what grade are they in and that type of thing. What's happening now is if we bring it up to an adult and say, you know, you really need to be with your child in their children's home, they'll say, oh, they're fine. And then we have nothing else, you know, we don't have, well, our policy states that you really need to be a night sight of your child. So, you know, it's a tool. It's not something that we're going to jam down everybody's throats, but you know,
Selectively.
when it needs to be pulled out, we have
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
You know, if there's somebody here who's maybe 7 and, you know, I suspect that they're not 8, but they're sitting there and doing their homework and behaving, I'm not going to go ask them how old they are, you know?
And same with the 8 and the 4-year-old, if they come here and they're,
Right.
you know, behaving well and enjoying the books and not, you know, not distracting the librarians in such a way that they have to pay a lot of attention to them.
Right.
As long as they're aware that they're there,
Right.
then that shouldn't be a problem.
Correct.
Mhm.
So, you know, this is a tool. It's not to arm us and really make more work for us trying to hunt everybody down. But, you know, in the worst case scenario, if a child does wander out of the library who's, you know, a certain age, and the parent says, well, why weren't you watching my kid? We can say, well, geez, the policy says, you know,
You
and
have to
it
do it.
protects us from
Mm-hmm.
not being responsible. And so we're welcoming, we want people here, and as long as, you know, they're behaving, that's fine, but it's when they're not, we need to have something on our side.
What do the lawyers say about a one strike and you're out rule?
We used a lot in my previous library. So I'm trying to remember. So because we're a public library, you have to have a certain, and I don't remember off the top of my head how long it is, but you have to have certain parameters. So if somebody's misbehaving, first I think it's 3 strikes. So first they go out for a week, then they have to be out for a month. All of this has to be certified letters to their home. And a copy also goes to the police. And then you almost can never ban them forever. That's not allowed.
We actually did. We banned someone about 10 years ago.
Forever?
Mhm.
Wow.
But it was bad.
It was that.
Yeah,
It
okay.
was bad.
Um,
He was a danger to the,
He broke into the library and spent the night here.
yeah.
Oh my God.
huh. Was it a child?
Mhm.
Mm,
Young, like a teen,
yeah,
not what they said, but.
yeah. Yeah, sometimes we had that a few times, and generally it's because they had nowhere else to go, right? But yeah, so anyway, so that's the point of the policy, is just so people don't just go, yeah, whatever to us, because it's just
Can you
not
ask
effective.
parents to sign a release?
No, I think that runs into privacy issues. We actually can't, so we have in the past, and we're rethinking how we want to do this, but in the past, when a child signs up for a library card, we had a guardian sign in. Under Massachusetts law, regarding privacy in libraries, minors are treated the same as adults.
Huh.
And so that's kind of something we always banter back and forth about. Because it's hard when a parent comes in and says, I want to see, you know, my child's bills, you know, because they are the ones that are probably, we don't really have bills anymore, so that really helps. But, you know, I want to pay for my child's library, or who do we contact when a child has bills? It's their guardian, right? But then we technically, under the law, we're not allowed to say what's checked out under that child's card, which is very hard to translate to people. And I get it, as a mother who might want to pay my child's bills on their library card, to hear, well, you can pay the bill, but we can't tell you what's on the card. That just doesn't bode well, but it's the law, so.
I like it.
So getting back to ages, so Alex, do you think age 8 is more appropriate than 12?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I think, I agree with Catherine about the Deer Hill factor, and you want to say third grade, fourth grade, it doesn't matter to me. I think that's about the time where you start getting, you're allowed to be independent and allowed to walk home. If you see the kids walking home around that age, you know, I think that's the time frame, like where all of a sudden you have a stop on the way home that's kind of fun to hang out in and do your homework in, and maybe, you know, horse around with your friends. I mean, that's how I utilized it, but yeah, I mean, I think,
was
but I think it's
eighth
Deer Hill.
grade.
What about
three.
Sharon? What's her input here?
So Sharon read it over. She actually read over what we had in Randolph, and she just said she didn't have strong feelings about age groups, but she was excited that we were putting some parameters in.
Some parameters, yes, but not this, yeah.
Um,
So-
Keep that, as you said,
Yeah,
that's.
you just
Yeah.
need the backup.
But I think the grades is actually a really great idea, because if you're in fourth grade, maybe half the classes, you know, 7 and half the class is 8, and you know your peers are all going, but you're kind of the younger in the crew, and then you don't, you know, you feel like you can't go because your parents read the policy or whatever it is. So I think grade levels is great. So third grade is
That's like
Eight?
eight to nine.
Okay.
actually, Right, yeah.
okay. So I think we set it at grade 3, and then you can be a caregiver at age 12. That what
So,
I've
yeah,
heard.
So basically,
Ten
like
or
if you're a
11.
Deer Hill student, you can come down here, and
Yep.
if you're at the middle high, you're qualified to accompany a younger child.
Yep.
That's basically what we're saying, right? I
Yep.
mean, I think that sort of probably fits in with, you know, what the natural impulse would be based on the, you know,
Okay.
the usage by.
Just out of
kids,
curiosity,
school
what's
kids.
the youngest babysitter you've ever had for your children?
Oh, God,
11, and that was what, 30 years ago?
yeah.
I was
My
desperate.
daughter
I babysat when I was 11, and my daughter
So did
babysat
I.
when she was 11.
Yeah, I think I did too, but I don't, yeah.
Okay.
I don't
Yeah,
know. I was
my
always
granddaughter
home, so.
babysits, and
But
she's,
that
when
was,
she
that would
was
be
11.
appropriate for.
She was
saying,
just walking
yeah,
kids home
because
from
that's
school.
great.
and
So
that's what she was
yeah.
doing.
Yeah.
She was, when she
Or
was
like-
11, she was taking them out of, walk them home from school, this is in Brookline,
Mhm.
and taking them to the library. That was her job.
So 11.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that would be like 6th grade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the middle
Yeah,
school.
we could do
Sixth
Sixth
grade.
grade again, you know, for that also.
Okay. Yeah. Grade 6.
And then it gives you some consistency across the policy also.
Yep.
And
Okay.
again, signals to the school kids that we we're welcoming them.
Yes.
Mhm.
I
That
think that's
we're
important.
talking to you. This is when you can do, this is how we see it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, this is really coming from our extreme cases that, you know, maybe there's some neglect going on, you know, things like in 3-year-olds walking down to the parking lot, things like that.
Yeah, so
A few rowdy 8-year-olds is not, to me, worth, you know, putting a policy together, and that's not what this is about. So I just want to be clear about that. But,
So I would just say that I think it's particularly infuriating is when you're actually, as a parent, are paying for a caregiver to keep an eye on your child, and they're not doing it. So that to me is inexcusable, because when it's a caregiver, it's like, well, that's what your job is. The whole brother, daughter, kid coming in and fooling around, if there's neglect there's another, I mean, I think that it's a different story. And you're basically, we had to make a decision on whether or not we have to, you know, whether that kid should be there and should be there, is there safely. But what's the story on this 8 and 4-year-old? I mean, they show up by themselves.
yeah, I'd rather not get into too much detail in a public meeting, but I'm happy to talk about that.
No, but as long as there is, so the reason I'm asking the question is that we just wrote a strategic plan that had one of the top things, it was about community, and so we should know everybody's story that's coming in here, whether, you know, whether the patron is 75 or the patron's 8 years old, we should get to know them, right?
We know the story.
So good. So then
So what are the,
so my point of this whole thing, but sorry, I'm going to interrupt it one more time, because my point of this whole thing is, let's not manage to the exception, right? Let's manage to the problem, right? So it feels like we brought that up as an example that
well, we asked the question.
but it's
Well, yeah.
particularly, it sounds like it was irrelevant to the problem. The problem sounded like it started with the caregiver sitting in the lounge, ignoring the 2-year-olds that are in the kid room, right?
I think it was 2 different examples. I think there were several examples that that.
No,
presents
as a
themselves
matter of
that
fact, the 8 and 4-year-old, as I heard it correctly, was that they weren't causing problems. They're not causing problems
No,
in the
I don't
library.
think anyone was saying they were causing problems. It was just maybe perhaps a potential discomfort level to put the librarians, have them be responsible for an extended period of time when these two younger children were in the library. And nobody was saying, I believe Megan actually said that they were well behaved. And I think it was two separate examples. So what I heard was, yes, that particular example, not because they were disruptive, but because, again, if this policy is going to help the library staff not escape responsibility, but not be put in positions where they are not empowered to say, we have a policy in place that would require you to be in this, when you have a 3-year-old or a 2-year-old, to be in the same room as your child, not, or within eyesight of your child. That would be one protection. And then the other one would be, you know, again, do we have situations where we have children who need to be in the library or in a public safe space, but are there other protections for the staff that are reasonable?
Slightly different topic. What resources do librarians have when they recognize that a child is in real difficulty? Given the stress that children are today, our daughter is a counselor at Lincoln Sudbury, and it's unbelievable the number of kids that really need to be referred for additional help, despite them coming from an affluent community with a lot of resources. So what do you do when you sense that there's an issue?
Yeah, so we have a town social worker, Stephanie Saunders, who's wonderful. Okay. So, you know, depending on what's happening, that's where I would start. Librarians, we've done some extensive research on this on a previous position, but librarians are actually not mandated reporters, but anyone who works for me is expected to report, and I make that very clear. Because that is just it's a people thing. And so generally, if the staff, you know, we had 2 years ago, we had a suspicion about some elder abuse that was going on, which was reported to me. And I always say to the staff, if something feels funny, if you think something feels funny, you're right. And so come and talk to me, we'll talk it out, and we'll see what's going on. So we suspected some elder abuse. We were 100% correct. I was able to call Mike Lopes at the Cohasset Police. He's a detective, he's wonderful. And, you know, kind of, I said, you know, hypothetically, this is the situation that's going on. What do you think about this? And he says, you know, you're absolutely right. There's something, you know, going on there. And then, of course, they know already, they kind of already knew this already. And so we were just supporting kind of their suspicions that they already had, and they were able to kind of use our information to move forward what they need to move forward with. So it depends on the situation. So I guess that's not very clear, but we have resources.
I wonder if Brooke has any comments based on her experience. We can ask her next time.
Yeah.
It's great though that you have those resources and you have a way of dealing with it, and there's people in town.
Cohasset has a great network.
As teachers have, they're mandated to report it. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. And so Cohasset has great network. We also have Safe Harbor. That's amazing, depending on whatever we suspect. We, you know, we have an increasing homeless population in Cohasset. So that's kind of been a new, you know, adventure for us. And we've been able to find housing for a few people and find some resources. So there's a lot of that goes on, more than you might think, actually.
That's wonderful.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's the part of the job that I love. Yeah.
So it sounds like we're in favor of adopting policy, and maybe you want to make some changes to the draft that you gave us.
Yes.
So do we want to then table a vote on the policy until after you've made the changes and maybe do that next month?
Yes, that sounds great.
Great.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
So then Alex was.
Oh, now Alex gets to go. I'm
Oh.
looking at you on the screen if you're wondering what I.
So, all right, so can I share my screen? Let me share my screen. Oops, hold on. Now for something completely different.
Elaine, don't leave.
I'm still here.
It's gone.
I'm still here.
Here we go. Okay,
You and me.
you see my screen now?
Yes,
I can
Yeah.
do.
Okay, good.
And how do I do this? View screen. All right, it's a little bigger. So Megan and I have had a couple conversations, particularly about how we can introduce the library to my group so again, let me take a step even further back. I don't know if some of you know that about 5 years ago, 5 years ago, a friend and I started a men's club called First Thursday. The premise is let's get together the first Thursday of the month and have some beers. And we started with a text chain of about 5 guys. That text chain is now an email list of about 175 guys. And it just gets bigger, and we meet at a random bar. And the effort that Ben and I put into this is that we send an email out every month saying, "Hey, we're going to get together here this month." And so we usually call ahead, and depending on the location, they put out a spread for us, and they do whatever. But anyway, the premise of it is there's actually no rules to First Thursday. The only rule is don't bring anybody who's not very friendly, and there's no you're really not pitching any agenda. All you're doing is just out for a bunch of dads locally getting together for a beer. So it's that simple. It's called First Thursday, and it's caught on. And when you're in a sleepy town that doesn't have a lot going on, people like to do whatever they possibly can to get out of the house. So we got started thinking about that, and then simultaneously we got to thinking about well, what are some good ideas, or what are some things we want to do, and it's the winter doldrums, and so as any good conversation that begins as a brainstorm, we kind of started putting a few things together. So I'm calling this Winter Golf at the Library. The background behind this, the objectives that we're trying to accomplish are 5 of them. We want to introduce new audiences to the library as more than just a building with books. We want to appeal to family audiences in a new way. We want to target a new audience for fundraising. We want to create the appeal to utilize the library for private events. I think there's an opportunity to drive revenue there. And we want to discover new ways to fund library programming and initiatives. So the insights that went into this was winter doldrums have cohesive families looking for indoor entertainment. That's not brain surgery. It's been happening for years. But what's interesting is that one of the categories that's trending in the world right now is family entertainment centers and mini golf. I'm not sure if you guys have been to Apex Entertainment in Marlboro, which is a ridiculously huge entertainment center for families to go out and throw parties, or to go and it has everything from axe throwing to trampoline park to obviously arcade and bowling, anything you can think of, go-kart racing, that kind of stuff. And then there's this place, Putt Shack, which just opened in the Seaport, which is basically 4 mini golf courses inside of a barn restaurant, which is also very fun. And they in both those locations actually serve really good food, which is so. Have yourself a trip out there and you'll enjoy yourself. But anyway, so those are just what's happening in the world at the moment. So the concept is let's create an 18-hole mini golf experience here at the library with day parts, or day parts for specific audiences. We could do it a few different ways, but we talk about can we appeal to school kids and tweens, families, teens and high schoolers, and dads. So I'm going to just highlight one version of how we can approach it, but we can do it a couple different ways. We don't have to choose. You have to choose Thursday.
Sorry to interrupt. Can you do that full screen, because we're having a hard time seeing it from in the room?
Let me see if I can
Maybe if you
bump
could
this
enlarge
up.
it a little bit, then we can read your.
Yeah.
Just turn it off and just talk.
Yeah, or just tell us.
Yeah. Let me see if I can make this zoom in here. I actually don't. Yeah, there we go. Zoom in.
yeah, that's getting better.
Yeah, that's better.
Couple
Oh,
more
yeah,
times.
there we go. That's much better.
How's that look? That look better? Okay. All right. So All right, so here's the concept. I think you followed me up to this point. We'll go to the concept here. So on March 3rd of 2023, hard to believe, the Paul Pratt Memorial Library will turn into the Cohasset Mini Golf Association headquarters. We're making it up, called the CMGA, as we seek South Shore's best and most enthusiastic golfers of all ages. On that Friday from 5 to 9, we'd invite families out. We'd have music, we'd have food trucks in place for 4 hours for family fun. And then as the families leave, we turn the music in a volume up, and we turn the lights off, and we create black lighting, and we create a much more cooler experience for our high schoolers for an after hours golf course with music and snacks for the teens. So again, it's kind of just a different take. There'd be a contribution that we would ask for, and again, it could be anything from, $10 per person to, $50 a family or something like that. But the night before that, on Thursday, March 2nd, the Paul Pratt Memorial Library would preview the concept as a social group for the local dads, for a group of local dads called First Thursday. From 8 to midnight, the library would open its doors for the First Thursday group so they can hold their first annual First Thursday Cup, an 18-hole mini golf tournament. On the line will be beer, bragging rights, and a trophy, of course. Dudes love trophies. Festivities would include bar, mostly beer, and a bartender, light hors d'oeuvres. Liability will be covered with insured on-site bartender and police detail. Site fee will be waived as First Thursday will pay for the golf course to be brought in for the weekend. So the thought process is this: First Thursday would come in, have their party on Thursday night. We would pay for the golf course to be brought in for the weekend to be utilized for the community. And then they would have their night out like we normally have a night out, but they get a chance to take a look at the library in a different light and get to see that the library is more fun because we can actually, I can just get them, just get them to see the library can be fun. It's not just about books. And then the rest of the weekend, whether we do it for a day or two after that, would be open to how we want to do it. And we could do it, we could do different formats. That was just one format that we could do, where we would just have a night of sponsorships. Maybe we'd have different restaurants come out and participate. We could even have whatever. We'd have vendors come out and participate, and have it as an opportunity to raise a few funds and for the community to see the library in a new light. Again, my back of the napkin would be that, if you did $10 a person or $50 a family, your donation target for a 4-hour period would be about $2,500. I don't even know why I said $5 per minute, but I was just making it up. So I think 2,500 is what I think we should be shooting for. And then here's the budget that would go into First Thursday. We'd for the night, police detail, a bartender, the booze, the food, the music, and the golf course, which is $4,000, will be brought in for $5,625. So basically, all I need to do is get 75 guys in for $75 a pop, and we'll have a fun night. And you guys we have a golf course for the weekend. Does that look or sound interesting to anybody?
Yes, I just had one question. Is this mini golf course, is it around the library? I mean, where is exactly between the stacks and all that?
Yeah, it's throughout the
It's
library.
a company there's actually a company there's actually two companies that does this. And they would come in and set it up for us and break it down and
Among the stacks.
yeah, they do. So that's why we do it when we're closed.
Cool.
But it's amongst the stacks. It is super fun. I actually Situate did it in the middle of the summer, and Wiley and I went. We had a great time. They charge they suggested donation is what they did. And it was great.
Why is it so expensive?
Um,
$4,000.
yeah, it's expensive. So it's because it's 2 sessions.
Okay.
So because we would need it for like 2 days. So it's
Is it all day?
$2,000. Well, that's what a discussion piece. So one possibility we talked about was a Friday night event after the First Thursday. Another thing that we talked about was maybe like a Sunday, until 2 when we open. So it'd be like a 9 to 2 type of thing that would have us open for a few more hours. So we were kind of in discussions on what we thought was the best kind of for a second family event
And the time of year you're thinking?
this March.
March 3rd.
Yeah.
So let's just say, so you had it on Thursday night, and then would it just be down all day Friday?
Yeah, so the
Okay.
company will come and take it down
Oh, no,
for
but I
the
mean,
2 days that we're open.
the patrons would be kind of like hopping over the tees and everything on Friday?
No, it's
during
all
the
gonna be
day?
taken down.
Oh,
So Thursday night, they would take down
okay,
the course and store it
Okay,
here, probably in
gotcha.
the storing room, and then they would take it back out
okay.
for the next
No, no,
event.
Sorry.
Right, but yes, that would have been a concern.
Well, it sounds pretty adventurous. I mean,
No,
My
I'm
only
excited.
concern is, if we have families here on Friday night eating food in the library,
Mhm.
are we sure we can have it clean for opening on Saturday morning?
We have a custodian that comes in the morning.
That's why I'm asking the question.
So that would be something, you're right, that I would need to talk to facilities about. They would need to come in and be a part of our team.
and we're cleared for the bartender.
So I'm gonna go talk to Chris Senior about it officially, but this bartender would need to be tip certified and have
Right.
insurance. And Alex has some family in the biz, so we think this is somebody that we could find. But I am gonna clear it with Chris before,
Chris,
yeah.
It sounds like a lot of fun.
it does sound exciting. I think we'll all be there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
I think it's a great idea. So, there's more information to be gathered, it sounds like,
Yes.
making sure that it can all happen, but,
So it's interesting that you also went to one of these things. and
Yeah.
was it- and
So we
just-
actually had one in Randolph too. So when we
Oh,
did
my
our grand
goodness.
opening, we did like a Saturday night, adults only, putt through the library and have a few drinks and see the new library. And then the next morning was the families came and you could putt through the library and see the new library. So that's kind of how we introduced it.
I
It was
I love
fun.
it as a pilot to a possibly recurring program.
Yeah.
The Friends actually looked at this years ago as a possible fundraiser, when they were looking at, like a murder mystery or, this, the golf was brought up as an option.
Yeah.
I think it's great.
It's fun.
Thank you, Alex.
Yeah. I think
Thank you.
fantastic.
Sounds good to me.
Cool.
Is there a discount for trustees?
Yeah,
Double.
it's that's a suggested donation, but for a guy like you, you'd be willing to give a couple $100.
No, thanks, Alex. That's
Yeah, no,
a
that's
terrific
great.
idea. I'm excited to see how it develops.
I think that's a great.
Yeah, it should be fun. I ran it by a couple guys and they were like, that's an awesome idea. We'd love to do that. So yeah, you just give somebody a new idea instead of going to a bar and you give them put a golf club in their hand. They'll be fine.
Awesome.
Thanks. That's all for me.
Thank you.
So that's all for you, Megan? too?
Yes, that's all for me too.
All right, so that's Bronwyn then, right?
Okay, I'll be brief. We've got a number of bills as usual. What was I gonna discuss? Just a couple things. The Americana Maintenance Service, they took down our tent and they are storing it in Rhode Island. And hopefully we will not need it this summer, but that's what that charge is for. It's actually half the invoice. They also did the senior center's tent. Other things that we have, Megan paid for a few things, that's why she is getting reimbursed for, she bought a yearbook for the high school. We don't have a credit card. So anytime we have to make a purchase where they won't take a purchase order or bill us, Megan has to get out her credit card and pay for it. I think she's getting points though, or miles or something. Maybe not such a bad thing.
Travel points.
Yeah.
Travel points, exactly. We got more patron cards. We were almost out of those, and everything else I think is basically just materials, supplies, things like that. And the only other thing I wanted to mention was, I don't know if you saw, but the state aid funds are somewhere
MIA.
floating around. Yes, I still haven't heard back. They were deposited. They never were credited to our account, so. It'll turn out, I'm not worried. We
I
don't
think they
need it
haven't
right
flipped
quite yet.
the revolving accounts yet. That's my
No, they have.
suspicion.
Yeah,
Oh,
they have,
did?
but she said she put it in, I think she hasn't closed the deposit though, because she had more to put in.
Oh.
But that was 2 weeks ago, was the last time
Oh.
I was talking with, so there's a new town accountant, a new assistant town accountant, and a new treasurer collector.
Wow.
And no assistant treasurer collector. So that's
Whole new ball.
a big part of the problem is that everyone has never done it before, or I'm not even sure who to talk to about it, but we'll work it out.
Yeah,
It'll be
we'll
fine.
find it.
It'll be fine, but it's a little concerning. And usually they tell us when the money comes in, and I never even heard about that. But
Right.
that's, and the endowment funds are down to about $2,000, so we'll need.
Yeah, we're having a meeting February 2nd.
Okay. Yeah, as long as we get it before the next
Yeah,
trustees meeting, because.
but the next trustees meeting is like February 9th.
Yeah.
So, but,
Yeah.
so they'll be comfortable liquidating it and getting it into the account.
I believe so. I mean, it's happened
It's already
that way
been,
historically, but
Yeah.
who knows?
does anybody have any questions about any of the
Good job.
particular bills?
Straightforward. We vote the bills? I move that we vote the bills.
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Don't forget to pass it on.
You know, sometime when we have extra time, I would love maybe a short description of how we can more effectively do our jobs of overseeing the budgets. Because if I ever got stopped on the street and asked about these details, I would just say, well,
We trust our,
yeah, exactly. And we should, but I just,
Do you mean specific accounts you have questions about, or the whole larger process?
they all fall in about the same, and then Bronwyn really explains if one's out of whack, then.
From month to month, I'd say the vast majority of the bills are similar.
Yeah.
maybe a better way to ask the question is, are you aware of any problems in Massachusetts where the trustees have missed some sort of financial issue?
And are all
Oh, well, one of the
personally
trustees-
responsible.
That's right. They're all in adjacent jails.
No, I don't get to the real question. Can I step in and say, Steve, that I think this fits in with our next discussion about the responsibilities and the answer we got back from the municipal lawyer, because I think that the short answer is that really it's the town manager who's ultimately responsible for
Okay,
all the money, basically. And then it's my interpretation of what she said is that our job is really more for, like, at what level do we want to improve what's spent within the library budget? But I think that's sort of the outer limits of what our
okay.
liabilities or exposure might
Paid
be.
every month.
I'm sorry?
But we approve what gets paid every month.
True, and well, we'll get to that. We'll
I mean,
get to that.
I asked the question because I was on the yacht club board at the same time that the treasurer was embezzling.
Hey. Well, we don't have
That was
access to the
different,
funds, so.
Yeah, thank you.
It was
And
different.
so you paid up, Steve.
Yeah, exactly. I covered it. Just a check.
Yeah.
For
I mean,
500,000,
since we don't have
something like
access
that.
to the funds, I think that really our exposure is extremely limited.
But I'm less worried about going to jail over it, but just,
Paper costs.
no, more just, is there any way we can help avoid problems that may not have been apparent to the actual staff that have come up on other libraries? And I guess the answer is no.
I haven't heard anything in the library. So here, as we all know, so I actually go through and sign, I'm supposed to sign them first, generally.
Right.
I get them signed at some point before they go over there. So they get signed by me, then they are reviewed by all of you, and you sign them here, and then they go to Chris Senior, and he reviews, and then he signs. So there's
Okay.
there's a triple check going on. So if I miss something and you miss some, and the finance director looks at them too. So there's a lot of safeguards in place. So, and that's true of most towns, at least there's
Mhm.
at least the finance director and the town manager. So it would be really hard to get
And there's
something
other things
passed.
like, we have a new vendor. I can't enter that person into the system or that company. I have to send
Oh.
the information to, well, it's the assistant town accountant that
Right.
enters it. We have to get a W-9 from them. It's so that I wouldn't say I set up my own
Right.
address.
Ron would know
Linden
an account.
Drive, you know, $1,000, something like that, and make it look like a company and send it to myself. So there's that. It's annoying sometimes because if they're out, when they didn't have a person, I couldn't
Sure.
pay bills to certain companies. But that's the whole reason for that, is
Okay.
that
Yeah.
one
See, I
person
didn't
can't
have
control
any
that.
understanding of that,
Yeah,
and I was
Yeah.
scarred by the
Yeah.
experience at the
yeah, no,
airport,
that sounds.
because it went past
Yeah,
all of us.
Yeah.
And this,
yeah.
actually, the state comes in and then assesses the finance
Oh, okay.
processes as well.
Yeah.
So even beyond that,
Of course,
if
also
we
have
were
the
all
water
doing something
department
shady,
problem
the
for
state
us.
would catch it.
So there's-
Yeah,
we've
so
had-
there's a lot of safeguards. in
Okay,
place.
thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right, well, so for me, I want to start by asking Carolyn for an update on the fundraising.
Oh, okay.
for the pavilion project.
Last I heard, we had commitments for about $80,000, a little over $80,000, and we had money in the door for about 60. And we are reaching out to the people that we had on our list that were invited to the corner stop, and we're unable to make it. We're reaching out to them all, or as many as we know and are comfortable doing personally, with more information and police support and all that. So this is our first step. We have a meeting set up for next week to talk about what we do after that. Obviously we can keep asking people one-on-one throughout the town, but at what point do we, put up a thermometer or have a daffodil sale or, some sort of, larger community event to spread awareness and try and, build up. Do we have do we find someone who might be able to make a large donation that could be used as a challenge match, things like that to try and get us that.
What about naming rights for something?
We said if somebody were willing to write a 6-figure check that they could have the name. So if you know someone and.
Well, no, what about a part of it?
We talked about that a little bit, but decided that we didn't like the idea of like little plaques outside. Yeah, they don't weather very well. And having little plaques, and there's not really anything to name other than maybe the pergola and maybe a table or something, a
Well,
wall.
the amphitheater down by
The amphitheater or the stage.
yeah.
And then how do you name that? So when we talked about it, we couldn't figure out a way to do it and that we thought was in keeping with the exterior of the library. And, we're not completely averse to the idea. We did think, somebody could have named the whole pavilion.
Yeah, yeah.
They wanted to.
That's still available, by the way.
Good.
But we will do some sort of a plaque or something. We haven't nailed down what we want to do. We wanted to see how many names we had and how it might work out before we figured out exactly how we would want to recognize it in a way that was tasteful and visual.
You can have a lot of names, yeah.
Depending on, I don't think we can have a plaque that recognizes every donation. So at what level do you do it?
Okay,
That kind of thing.
yeah.
That's
yeah. The Nobels and the Pulitzers, maybe.
Great,
Anyway, that's it.
all right, thank you. So then the only other remaining issue, the one that we've already sort of pushed along a couple of times, but I'm just throwing it out there. And I know I circulated the email a while ago that came back from the lawyer, right? Did I send that? Yes. So my read of it is basically of her opinion was essentially that the Friends operate separately, and anything else we're doing certainly is not out of bounds. And it's a question of whether we have any inspiration or motivation to make changes to what we're doing as far as removing the bills. Do we want to, make changes to the level at which we are monitoring the finances? Back to your point, Steve, do we want to keep it the same? Do we want to make changes to how we're dealing with the Friends based on her opinion? Do we want to continue to think about this? Where do we stand? So I put the question out.
Yeah. I thought it was excellent. I liked, but it wasn't exactly super definitive either. I mean, there was a lot of wishy.
Well,
And
it's advice.
Yeah.
I mean, this is my read of it, and so.
Yeah, no, I agree. I was just gonna say, what exactly did we want to change with the way things are going now?
Well, the original question was, do we need to continue to vote on the Friends budget?
I would say no.
I would say no also. That would be my view of it. But I don't know how others feel, or whether we want to discuss that again or more fully, or take a vote, or what do we think? Thoughts?
When you say the Friends budget, you say, you're speaking of what the Friends spend that money on.
Or, yes, or just the grant that they give to us. So what we've been doing is the Friends are saying, this is
You
the
give us
budget
this
that
much
we,
money.
exactly for the year. And we've been taking a vote to approve that amount, which I found puzzling. That was sort of the beginning, the genesis of this whole
But you're not
conversation.
talking about the Friends going off and running a circus or something.
No, we're just acknowledging that we're not the boss of them, basically. And they're a private organization, and if they want to give us a gift, that's great. And we don't really have any regulatory influence over what they do,
What
because
if they
they're,
wanted to do something else?
I mean, that's their prerogative, because they're a private organization.
I mean, it's our hope that we all work in a partnership and we work together as a team, but regarding law, they don't have to work together with us as a team. They will, because we're going to foster our relationships with them and make sure, that we all work cohesively and all those good things. But, and we do so as an entire, we do the same with the CLT. We want to make sure that we're all working together. And they want the same, of course. But we also need to acknowledge, I believe, that we don't oversee them. We're a team, not a hierarchy.
Right.
I would agree with that. The place where I may go off is that I agree, but I think that when they present the money to the library for the programs, I mean, if they say we're gonna bring in a stripper, I mean, I think that what they put out for us to put our seal on, that should have we should have a say in that. We should say, I'm not saying maybe just the trustees, but maybe the director and the trustees should have some say about the program.
Well, I think the
Because
way
it
we
is
have it set up now,
ultimately,
the
the
staff,
responsibility comes back here.
right, but the way it's set up now, basically the staff is choosing the programming.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and the town manager is in charge of the building. So if they wanted to have a stripper, then it would be, then the town manager would say, this is a town building that I am in charge of as the town manager, and the town is in charge of it. And we don't allow strippers in our town building.
What about if we
No,
want
but
to
what
paint
if he did? No, let's
Well,
just, that's a good
but-
example.
But no, a better example, there was a little bit of a kerfuffle with the flags. What if there were a program that might appeal to one audience, but maybe ruffled the feathers of another audience? That might be something we want to discuss as to like how many feathers we felt like ruffling. Is this something that's important? We decided the flags were important because we wanted to show that we were inclusive and everything. There may be programs or something that somebody might not have thought of or whatever, that just might be worth discussing,
So the staff puts on the programs though, not the Friends,
I
right?
agree,
And
yeah.
so, they provide, their role is to provide the funding. So if they say, Megan, we want to provide the funding for something really weird. I have the power, the town manager has the power, we have the power to discuss, we have the power to say no.
Yeah.
You know, that we're not going to accept funding for that weird thing. That doesn't make us in charge of us, in charge of them.
Yeah.
That makes us in charge of the building and operations,
Mm-hmm.
which does fall under our purview.
And I think that if there was something controversial happening, certainly maybe it wouldn't be binding, but I don't see any reason why we couldn't convene a meeting and, you know,
No,
make
I
a
agree.
statement or take a vote
Yeah.
about what our consensus is about that issue and what, you know, whether it's binding on anybody or not.
And things have evolved historically. We talked a little bit about this a few months ago. You know, it used to be that every program came through us for approval before it went to the Friends for their request. And, you know, 99.5% of the time, it was, of course, no problem. The only one I remember we turned down was somebody who wanted to do a memoir writing class, and he wanted $1,000 for it, but would only take 10 people. And we thought that wasn't.
Right, on the resources.
Yeah, exactly. You know, we have limited resources and there's only 10 people. And, you know, it just didn't seem to be the right fit. But it was, you know, it was a good discussion over that. But I completely respect that you have wanted to empower the staff and give them a budget and say, come up with some fun ideas that bring people to the library, and it's working. So I like that. And I don't want to go back to approving every little thing that comes through. So I'm not trying to say that we should. I just think things have evolved over time, you know.
And if there is something, you know, controversial that we still work together as a team. You know, it was brought to the trustees when we did the flags, it was brought to the Friends. There were some, you know, disagreements on whether they, you know, but it wasn't the whole, you know, it wasn't the whole Friends group. And so, you know, when we do things like that, we work together as a team because that's best practice. It's not necessarily like the law,
Yeah.
but that's what we
Exactly.
want to do. We all want to work together. But to work together, want to make sure everyone understands the role, and also that people don't feel like their role is being minimized. And so, you know, I think, you know, again, it's important for us to acknowledge that we're all a team, but I think it's also important for us to acknowledge that there's not a hierarchy in this particular team.
Well, and I think, again, the best practice is that in order for us to work effectively as a team, if everybody knows what their role is, I think that gives you your best chance personally.
So, so would you say that the role then would be that the Friends' major role is fundraising, not deciding on the programs?
Correct.
The staff would be the staffing,
Yes.
and the trustees would just be, I would say, you didn't say this, it's gonna be me now. I was gonna say that, you know, we vote on this 5-year plan everywhere we have this overall viewpoint for the library, that I would say that maybe our role would be to make sure that it all fits in with our 5-year plan, or our overall plan.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, if we're all a team, so if
That's a good
I'm
point.
doing something that's a little bit, if I have an idea for a program that I think, I bring in my team and I make sure that everybody, you know, wants to do it. So,
Well, that's you, but next year we could have a director who
doesn't want to bring the team in.
doesn't want to bring the
Right.
team in.
Well, and so, you know, that's part of why, you know, when I first started, I was asking a lot of clarifying questions about how everything goes, because, you know, there wasn't anything really put in place about, okay, this is this group's role, and this is this group's role, and this is this group's role. And so, you know, I'm also kind of looking at, not that I'm leaving anytime soon, but I'm looking out for the next person who comes up so that they understand how this place runs. And so all this doesn't need to happen again. And so that was, you know, part of my drive to ask some of these questions, because it didn't seem like everybody had their opinions on how things should go,
Right,
but it didn't
right.
really seem like there was something set. And, you know, if I do move on someday, or I do continue here and I want to make sure we're successful to the optimal amount, we need to make sure that everybody knows their role in the team.
Mhm.
Agreed. So is there a vote in this conversation? Do we need to vote to stop voting? I mean, that feels a little silly.
I
I
don't
mean,
think
we
so.
could just stop doing it.
We already have.
Yeah.
We haven't voted on the friends thing in ages.
Well,
It feels like.
Great.
That's the only issue really, is just not to have.
well,
a
it
vote?
was also clarify, that was the only thing that I thought was, you know, a concrete decision, but the discussion was to clarify everyone's understanding of the role of each of the three distinct entities. And I think that we've accomplished that.
I mean, I was
Right.
surprised that the town manager's in
Four,
charge of the,
including the town manager. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was surprised that the town manager was in charge of the building. I thought that was the trustees. And so, and quite frankly, I thought,
Select board.
well, it's, and town managers act, it's the town manager, right? So it could have been like, so there's just so many different players. And the finances, quite frankly, I felt like that because the town manager was a part of the, in charge of the entire appropriated budget, that maybe like this signing of bills was not required. It is required, even though he still oversees all the appropriate budget. So for me, there were a lot of things that were
Which also
clarified.
could change, because I think the town, again, the town manager's responsibility isn't necessarily, that's not written in blood. I mean, a new town manager could have very different, it would be different. Chris has taken on a lot of this himself.
Well, it's a
each year.
charter. It's a town charter. So if
Right.
there's a new town manager, the charter will still stay unless the new town manager
Changes
petitions
the
to have
town-
it
right,
changed.
Change the
Right.
constitution.
Right, yeah,
Yeah.
and that's true. And that's true.
Yeah.
So-
Alex, were you gonna say something?
Yeah, no, I was just more curious about that point about like signing the bills and, accounts payables and accounts receivables, like versus strategic planning, right? Like thinking about like the long term and how are we going to achieve the objectives? Is that I was kind of more surprised that we were looking at minutia versus looking at like in terms of amount of time to spend, like how much time should we be spending looking at bills or looking at Bronwyn negotiating a fixture and then building the fixture. I mean, it's an amazing contribution, Bronwyn, but at the same time, it's like good on you for doing it. And I don't need to be a part of that decision, right? Like why would I be a part of that decision? So sorry. So I was just thinking, like, what's the big picture versus okay, I want to be involved in the big picture stuff. I don't necessarily need to be involved in, signing bills. That's my personal opinion, but I don't know if I'm misunderstanding my role, I'm happy to keep signing, bills. That's fine, or whatever it is that we do.
Yeah, that was the basis of my question, is that I sign it because I trust what's happening, but is that necessary?
Well, apparently it is.
I mean, it sounded to me like that we could decide to give that up, but currently that's what we do. That's our customary practice, and that certainly fits in with our mandate, if that's what we choose. If we chose to fork it over to the town manager, I think that we could do that based on the lawyer's advice, but we may want a little bit more, a stronger opinion from her, maybe ask her to delve into it a little bit more deeply to make sure that we have adequate guidance before we made that decision.
There's no reason to do that, though.
No, I don't
It's fine.
feel, I have no problem with hearing what we're
Yeah.
reading through it. I mean, personally, I feel, I don't feel any inspiration to do that. So, I mean, if,
Nor do I.
We're good.
that's just what I think you're alone on that one, Alex.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, there's no, I mean, we all have our strengths, so I'm totally fine not admitting to what I'm interested in and what I'm not interested in.
terrific. All right, good. Well, I guess that wraps up that discussion. Thank you, everybody, for participating and thinking through all the issues. So
Thank you.
that's it for me. So that means Friends is next. We had a meeting last week. And not much to report. I don't have the number in front of me on the appeal. Maybe I do. The appeal is roughly the same. I want to say 25. Yeah, I thought it was going to say 24, 25. So they're pretty much in line with last year.
I also know they made a pretty large deposit after our meeting,
Oh, they
which
did.
I'm excited about. Yeah.
Okay, all right, good. I mean,
So maybe a couple K more.
the biggest change for the Friends with the appeal was adding the gift letter account. That's been absolutely huge.
Mhm.
And I noticed the placard coming in, which was great, because they've reached out again after sending the letter. They've, reached out to their email people and, on social. And I think that those extra little pushes are making a difference. And I think making it more accessible and easier for people who are not necessarily like letter reading, check writing people, has made a difference.
Just a click here.
Yes, or a scan of the QR code or, or what have you. So, so I think that's good. I think we're reaching people who were, patrons, maybe like the young parents who historically maybe have not been big donors, demographically speaking, and also. on an
And they get
individual
excited in the
basis.
moment and they click.
Exactly, yes. Yeah.
No deliberation. We can't.
This is where
this is
social
not-
media
but
comes
This is
in
a great
handy.
cause.
That's right. That's exactly right. So.
Sounds familiar.
But they are still looking at a shortfall between the appeal and what their grant to us for the year was. So that's something that they are still
How much?
looking at. I want to say it's about $5,000 or $6,000.
Do they still have money from left over?
They do, yeah. So they have enough to cover it this year, but it's not, sustainable for the long term.
Yeah.
So they are thinking about what are some other options, apart from doing the annual appeal for,
An alternative. Just
Yeah,
saying.
exactly. So, so that's basically the upshot on the Friends. So, any new business that anybody would like to share? Oh,
The
CLT.
CLT hasn't met, so it's just the fundraising. which we
Right,
already
we
covered.
already covered that, yeah. So,
I have one more thing I forgot about, and it's not in my report. So we are supporting the Martin Luther King breakfast. And we are the one read for the breakfast. So if you're thinking about going, you could check out the master plan, My Journey from Life in Prison to Life of Purpose, who is not the speaker, but on the story is on the same realm of what the speaker will be talking about. The speaker this year is Arthur Bembury. He's the executive director of Partakers, which is an organization, you know it? Okay. And then the book is about being in prison and then coming out and finding a new life. So it's kind of a similar topic. We bought 7 paperbacks for people to come and check out from the library to work with them.
Do
So,
people know that?
yes. Well, if they read the
Oh, it says.
yeah, if they read the flyer, they'll know. And we're gonna help start doing some publicity as well. We just got the flyer today. So, but that's in line with one of our strategic plan goals. Diversity.
That should be a good speaker.
great, all right. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
You do. Second.
All in favor?
Hi.
Aye.
Terrific. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye. Bye, guys. I was just keeping this handy because Brooke had said that she,
We got out of the band pass, and I was like, oh my God.
must have been
Band pass.
disconnected.
yes.
I used to go